On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about a secret to effective leadership, performance, and team performance. We're going to be talking about personal biorhythms. You may or may not have ever thought about your own personal biorhythm or even known what it is, or your own natural energy levels and how it impacts, your daily operations. But knowing and implementing this makes a monumental difference. Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced the best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back, breathe in good oxygen, and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world.
Stay tuned at the end of the episode for a special word from Jason about breathing oxygen, his new book.
Hey everybody, it's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast, wherever you are and however you're coming to the podcast today. So glad you are here. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. So glad you're here. So glad this continues to grow and spread and is contributing in so many great ways. And if you're somebody who's been with us from the very beginning, welcome back. So glad you're here. I'm so grateful for all the people that have been loyal listeners to this along the way. It's my commitment to everyone is that this is going to continue to be a place for you to step back, to think, to be filled with positive, hopeful, messages, some space and time for you to step back and to really think and be fueled so that you can make an impact in your life and work and whatever it is that you're focusing on these days. I'm more convinced of this than ever, as you know, that authentic, genuine leadership that cares for people, brings people together, is needed more than ever in the world today. And compelling cultures that people want to be a part of, are meaningful and needed, and we have an opportunity to create them together. So glad you're listening to today. Before we dive into today's podcast, if you'll just do me the quick favor, if you will rate the podcast 5 stars, of course, I hope. Leave a nice a positive review on whatever platform you're listening. Every time you take a time to rate and review, it really helps other people find this podcast. So thanks for anybody that's willing to do that and takes the time to do it. Obviously, sharing it on social media, inviting other people in your life or your network or on your team and organization to be a part of these conversations. All those ways help us spread these messages and amplify them further into the world. So thanks for anyone who takes the time to do that and help us out. On today's podcast, we're going to be talking about a secret to effective leadership, performance, and team performance. We're going to be talking about personal biorhythms. You may or may not have ever thought about your own personal biorhythm or even known what it is, or your own natural energy levels and how it impacts, your daily operations. But knowing and implementing this makes a monumental difference. This topic is certainly related to one of the last episodes, the last episode that we did where I talked about rest and the secret to elite performance. So if you missed that one, just go back and listen to the very episode right before this. That will really kind of clue you in, and this is certainly related to that. But before we dive into today's topic, let's pause for a quick break, and we'll be right back with today's episode. If you haven't done so already, we hope you'll visit Amazon or Amplify or jasonvbarger.com to check out Breathing Oxygen, my new book that is all about breathing good oxygen into ourselves and mindsets that fuel ourselves and the teams and the organizations around us. Positive, healthy thinking is as essential to great leadership and building a winning culture as the air we breathe. Leading yourself and a team of people has never been more complicated than it is today. As a leader, every move you make is either breathing life into your organization or slowly killing it. The atmosphere can easily turn toxic with negativity, blame, and doubt poisoning the culture. Just like every being on the planet needs good air to breathe, every organization needs leadership that breathes life into its people to sustain the energy required to complete its mission. Breathing Oxygen focuses on 6 key leadership mindsets that breathe life into any team: clarity, inclusivity, mental agility, grit, rest, and ownership. Join us. Join the launch. Read and share Breathing Oxygen. Personal biorhythm. So, many people have never even heard this terminology before or thought about this idea. So if you're one of those people, it's okay. Hang with us. Let me introduce this kind of idea around personal biorhythms to you. So here's the quick version, by the way. On this pod, we'll cut right to the quick version. There are many different studies and theories about personal biorhythm. In fact, many of them started in the 1970s, studying how humans have personal biorhythms. Many of these studies and theories suggest that we have different physical, emotional, and intellectual cycles that our bodies move throughout in an average month. So again, think of it from a physical cycle that we move in and out of every month. Energy level flows throughout a month physically, but also flows throughout a cycle emotionally. And then our intellectual energy levels kind of go up and down throughout an average month. So most commonly, the female menstrual cycle would be an example of a physical cycle. Obviously, people recognize that women have a cycle that they go through physically. But the hypothesis and the studies are also around not just our physical cycles that our bodies go through and our energy levels physically, but the emotional and intellectual energy that our bodies kind of cycle in and out of in an average month. Which with each of those 3 areas, again, physical, emotional, and intellectual energies. That's about as deep into the science of it as we need to go on this podcast. But I'll just personalize it for you because I think that's very helpful for us to then begin to wrap our heads around it. Before I even knew what this term was, or I began to study about it, but I also began to just be aware and think about it for my own body. I'll share a little bit about what I've noticed and become more aware of related to my own unique biorhythm, and then also what I've been aware of with some of the people around me. So my own biorhythm, as I step back, if I think about my own daily biorhythm, my unique personal biorhythm, which means on an average day, my energy levels follow a particular cycle. And so as I start to look at it, I have become more aware that I am an early riser. I've always known I'm an early riser, but as I started to step back and look at it, my most creative parts of my day, my energy level, oftentimes is early morning, and throughout the entire morning are my most creative times. I wake up early, my mind is going, I typically have a lot of creative energy, and throughout a morning is when my, kind of creative energies are at their best. After lunch, my energy starts to take a downturn. And around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I know is my lowest point of energy throughout an average day. And then about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I start to have an uptick of energy, and I get kind of a second wind that carries me into the dinner time, into the early evening, and then about mid-evening, my energy starts to dip again, and I slowly my energy level starts to come down until eventually I fall asleep. And the next day I start the biorhythm, my own cycle again. And that's typically the way, again, from a physical rhythm, but also I've noticed about my own kind of emotional and intellectual levels that I know creatively in the morning, kind of a lull in that 2 o'clock time, and then kind of a second wind that kicks in late in the afternoon. Now, I know that about my own personal biorhythm, and it begins with kind of my own awareness around myself. But I also, if I step back and I think about the people around me, I also know that not everybody has that same biorhythm. Some people have a very similar biorhythm, but other people don't. So I'll use my wife, Amy, as an example. She has a different biorhythm than I do. she is not an early riser. In fact, we know that her body just physically, she kind of needs more sleep than I do. And so she's not an early riser. She doesn't jump right out of bed, and that's not her most creative time of the day. She's more of a later riser. Again, if she can and if she would choose that, she'd be a later riser. Her most creative energy isn't first thing in the morning, but probably kicks in about mid to late morning and then carries throughout the afternoon. And then she hits her lull, her dip of energy comes around 4 o'clock in the afternoon or so, in that kind of late afternoon time. And then about dinner time, she seems to get a second wind of energy. And then she's much more, carries her into the evening, and she's much more of a kind of night owl than I have ever been. And so her energy level kind of carries, and then again, rinse and repeat. It becomes that cycle each day. And that's her natural rhythm. That's the natural rhythm that if her body just chose, that's the rhythm that she would be in. So you've heard me talk about, let me kind of connect the dots here too. You've heard me in past podcast episodes talk about emotional intelligence. If you're somebody out there that's reading any kind of business articles or paying attention to things that are happening in the world, the future of work, then you know that the terms that people are talking about so much right now, culture, of course, being the first one, and how important culture is and in creating meaningful work and places where people can engage and navigate their way through all the challenges that we've been experiencing over the last 2.5 years. But the other term that you're going to hear a lot of is emotional intelligence, and talking about how important emotional intelligence is for us individually to navigate our way through all that we're facing and all the uncertainty in the world, but also to working with other people. And that really the opportunity for all of us is to raise our level of emotional intelligence. And so again, if you want to know more about this, check out some old episodes where I've done a series all about emotional intelligence and tips and practices and all that to raise our level of emotional intelligence. But for the reference for today, I just want to make sure, again, we're defining the term in a good way. Emotional intelligence is, again, quickly, is our awareness of ourself, being able to, how are we feeling, how are we thinking, what are we experiencing, our awareness of that, and then our awareness of others, how they may be seeing or thinking or feeling in a particular situation. And so it starts with that kind of awareness and recognition of ourself and others. But then the key part is our ability to use that awareness or recognition in order to, kind of calibrate our thermostat and to proactively then respond with a particular actions and behaviors to meet the needs of what we're noticing in ourselves and what we're noticing in the people around us. That's really the practice of bringing emotional intelligence to life. So as we connect the dots to what we're talking about today, better awareness of ourself starts with, for me, is I need to better understand what is that rhythm that I have about my own physical, emotional, and intellectual energy levels. And as I become better aware of that for myself, and then also as I begin to become better aware of it with other people, that will allow me, and certainly as we're thinking about it from the context for your life or for leaders or contributors on a team, it allows us to then be more thoughtful about how do we plan, how do we execute, how do we implement our daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly operations or strategies. We have to use the awareness and recognition that we have of ourselves in order to then plan and execute accordingly. So again, I'll give an example. I have learned that if I know this about myself, that my most creative times of the day are that early morning energy, that are the mornings, then I have to maximize those early morning hours, or I have the opportunity, I guess is the better way to say it, to maximize those morning hours when I'm at my most creative energy level. So when I'm at my best, it means I'm blocking time to give the right tasks and priorities to that energy level. So things like writing. This is when I'm best at doing my kind of creative speech writing and preparations for clients. It's for delivering of speeches, facilitating team and consulting with organizations. The morning hours is when I'm going to be at my most creative time. And so I have an opportunity to leverage that energy level with aligning it with the right tasks. If I were to use that time to just kind of return emails or do office-y work that doesn't require the same kind of creative energy, then there's actually an opportunity cost to that. That not only, one would say, well, yeah, but you still got things done that you needed to get done. You returned those emails or office. You did the office work that still needs to get done. But the point is, I would have sacrificed or given up my most creative energy time for tasks that don't require that kind of creative energy. And so there's an opportunity cost for not leveraging what I know about my own unique biorhythm. So if I'm using this awareness, then I would know that office or office-y kind of tasks or returning emails is best for me, and my own personal biorhythm is best spent in the early part of the afternoon as my energy is getting lower, when I hit that kind of lull, to give my focus and attention to things that don't require that much creative energy and align it with that time of day. I also know that when I need to have a strategy for approaching that 2 p.m. lull. And rather than just kind of biting my lip and quote unquote just kind of grinding through it or working through it, when I know I'm not going to be at my most productive self. And again, I know there are times and days and moments where we do just need to do that. We have something planned or there's something we can't move. And so we have to bring our best to it. I understand that. But if I can avoid it, then what I need to do is have a strategy for how I give, what do I need to give to that 2 o'clock lull in order so I can be at my best. So rather than just quote unquote powering through it and not being all that productive during that 2 p.m. lull, that's a better time in my schedule so I can be healthier for me to take a walk, get up away from my screen, move my body a little bit. It may be when I schedule a workout. It may be, I'm a big believer in 20 minutes, lay down, close your eyes. Sometimes you may fall asleep, but that kind of 20-minute power nap idea where you just allow your brain to get away from what it is that you're working on, allow your brain to reboot. I set a little 20-minute timer, and I snap back up, and my mind is refreshed in a way that helps me be more productive. Each of those are strategies so that when I hit my second wind at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm more able to then be at my best. And then at that 3 o'clock hour, now when my second wind kicks in, is now a better time for me to plan one-on-one conversations I might need or coaching clients. It may be a team meeting that I may have, a virtual thing I'm doing with somebody, or prepping myself for the next day. That is using my own awareness of my personal biorhythm and blocking time in my schedule strategically to meet the different energy levels. That awareness and then strategy has made a gigantic, huge difference in my efficiency, my effectiveness, and also my happiness because I'm aligning the right tasks with the particular energy levels throughout a day. But it has required me to be aware and then manage myself. Now, it also plays out that I need to be aware and have the opportunity to be aware of other people. Again, I'll use Amy as an example. If I know her biorhythm, then I also know that if we have a very important or courageous conversation that we need to be having, that 8 a.m. over coffee isn't the best time to do it. Although it might be the best time for my energy level, I know for her, that's not at her best, most creative time. So if we're needing to have a conversation where we both need to be clued in and locked in and ready to be at our best, then if we schedule at 8 a.m., then we're not setting ourselves up for success. We'd be smarter if we set it later on in the morning when her creative energy is beginning to kick in and I'm still at a high level around my creative energy. Or we could pick, in the early evening when her energy level is still, kind of on the upswing and mine yet hasn't quite gotten to its downswing. So it's strategizing of when we're going to be at our best to align the time with the right energy level that we need. That sets us up for success. So think about this and relates to your own biorhythm, but also your own interactions with the relationships and the team members that you have. Do you align the proper tasks and efforts with your best energy levels? I talk a lot with teams and organizations about the idea of investing time versus just managing time. Managing time is where we just put out fires all day, or we just reactionary. We just kind of experience our day based on what comes at us, who schedules meetings with us, what ends up being on our desk, and we kind of manage it very reactionary. Investing time is about proactively saying, what are my highest priorities and how am I blocking time and investing my time? What is the best time to perform the most important task with the right people around the right priority at the right time? This is when we're most effective, efficient, and we're able to be at our best. In my work with leaders and teams, as we've gotten into this kind of personal biorhythm, and people have become more aware of their own biorhythm, but then also begin to be more aware of the other people on their team, their biorhythms, these insights have been unbelievably helpful and allow people to think about, hey, I know we can't control every situation or everything that's happening in the world or everything about our schedules. Of course, we know everybody can't. But as we begin to step back and think about our own personal lives, our own work, and our own differences that we know about our biorhythms, it's allowed people to become more aware and then be able to plan and block time so that they can invest time rather than just manage time and be at their best. When are we going to be our most efficient? Effectiveness, it's going to bring about greater happiness because our energy levels will align with what we're trying to give to. And in the end, we will be better because we've set ourselves up for successful outcomes. In these kind of situations, I know perfect examples of when teams then have stepped back and said, yeah, why do we always do that 9 a.m. Monday morning meeting if that's not exactly the best time for our biorhythms to meet? Why do we try to do an off-site, really important creative meeting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon? Why, why do we try to do this meeting on this day in the week when in the rhythm of our week it might be better here? And as they've looked at it, as a team, they've made strategic decisions that have led to better outcomes. Our world-class performance, or however you rate or aim for your own performance, is directly tied to our ability or our inability to use our emotional awareness, our recognition of these things we know about ourselves and others, to then deliberately practice, to deliberately, dive in and invest our time in the most important things, but also to deliberately rest and think and grow and evolve our lives and work so that we can be at our best when it's needed. That's where our best performance lives. So the culture of how we coach, how we lead, how we teach, how we develop, it matters. And so leaders, teams, and organizations in the world today play an enormous role into the future of how we think about our own rhythms as teams and as organizations and how we bring our best selves so that the cultures we create are meaningful to people, are helping them be at their best, and all of us experience better outcomes to get together. We are co-creators in that experience together. So, a few questions for you to ponder this week. What is your unique biorhythm? As you step back and think about it for yourself, what is your unique biorhythm? What is the unique biorhythm of those around you or on your team or relationships in your life? What are their biorhythms? Are you aligning the right tasks, engagements, priorities at the right times in order to align with your own personal biorhythm? Remember, the best leaders, teams, and cultures on the planet stimulate progress by recalibrating their thermostat together. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to you and your organization, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com, jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we are all ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat. I wrote Breathing Oxygen because I needed to breathe in good oxygen in my own life. And what I'm finding is that other people needed it too. There continues to be high levels of uncertainty and change and division and angst and so much that seems out of our control. It's challenging for individuals and teams and organizations to navigate their way forward. And it's easy to get sucked into negative and toxic mindsets and actions. We all know there are oxygen givers and oxygen takers in every room and in every organization on the planet. And so leaders and teams need to be deliberate about what is the air that they breathe and the mindsets that they feed. When we breathe in good, healthy mindsets, our performance expands. And when we breathe in toxic and negative mindsets of gossip and blame, our performance deflates. Breathing Oxygen focuses on 6 key mindsets. Mindsets of clarity, of inclusivity, mental agility, grit, rest, and ownership and positive accountability. Positive leadership is about being honest and transparent about the challenges we're facing and still choosing to be optimistic and believing that we can create a better future. Winning cultures doesn't just mean winning the contest or becoming best in class or the best at whatever it is that you do, although I hope and we aim for that too. A winning culture is one that is authentic, where people are aligned around creating a compelling culture together that also produces results. Research and data continues to tell us that people want to be a part of a more meaningful culture, that they want to be a part of something greater than self, that they want to contribute, they want to develop, and they want to share in the creation of a compelling culture. But as I talk about in my book, Thermostat Cultures, it won't just happen magically on its own. We have to lead the change that we want and intentionally set the temperature at all levels of the company, and then breathe oxygen into it to keep it going. We all know that culture shaping never stops. We just have to continuously breathe good oxygen.
Coming August 2nd from Amplify Books and on Amazon.